the burden of family care has fallen disproportionately on women still. School buildings still not open, older parents requiring care for younger children, child care is often unpredictable. Just with that, how much of an impact, can you tell, is that factor?
I think that is the primary factor in this downturn. So industries have played a role to some extent, but I think when you look at it and look at really what's happened to labor force participation in particular, you can see that burden of childcare and broader family care, to your point about, elderly parents, that falls disproportionately on women as well. So if we look at the decline in labor force participation since COVID for men with children, it's been about 0.6 of a percentage point. For women with children, though, it's been 4 times that. It's been a decline of 2.4 percentage points. And so that really underscores just the disproportionate toll that those family responsibilities have taken on women's labor force participation over COVID.
And this isn't some, niche story here. The U.S. economic growth of the past 50 years has been fueled so much by women participating so much more than in the past. And we're talking now about all this spending that we're embarking on to get out of this pandemic, the need for growth, the need for new revenue. That's got to come from women participating, right?
Absolutely. So this is really a story about how do we grow the economy on a long-term sustainable basis. So we are going to see the strongest growth in roughly a generation this year, but so much of that is on the backs of this fiscal stimulus, not on a long-term sustainable path. In order to get the economy growing more than just that anemic 2% rate we've experienced over the past decade, we are going to need to see things like stronger productivity growth and stronger labor force participation. Women's labor force participation had actually recovered prior to the COVID downturn from the Great Recession, whereas men's prime participation had not. And so women were really driving this turnaround and been a huge source of labor force growth over the past few decades. And those efforts stand to really be dented by the discouragement and repercussions when it comes from taking time out of the labor force and going back to work. So there are long-term penalties from taking time out of the workforce, which could dent women's return to the labor market.
So based on that, a little bit of an odd question maybe, are childcare and perhaps more uniform and understandable standards for schools, building quality, pushing back against teachers' unions sometimes that say we're not going to come to work, are those infrastructure? Because without those, it seems mostly women, just because of the way our culture is, at this point at least, aren't going to be able to have a reliable path back into the workforce.
I think our childcare and educational systems make it very hard for households to have 2 full-time working parents. So that usually means that the women tend to take more of a backseat in their career. So whether that's working part-time or even just having to work in a job that maybe offers more flexible hours, I think plays into that. And so much of that has to do with just the school hours, school holidays, the fact that we don't have a system to help support early childhood education. So as a result, we have very expensive childcare options, and so that can make it very difficult for a household to have 2 full-time working parents, where it's just not affordable. And so I think that the education system definitely plays a role in this, and COVID has really shined a light on just how difficult it makes to have 2 full-time working parents in a household.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.